everyone, and once again, a very warm welcome to the Winter School Ethics and Aesthetics. So, as you could see, that we've had a, a series of interesting sessions so far, and we are back again on the fourth day of this winter school with yet another set of sessions. So, for today, as I said, we'll begin with with another interesting session from Professor Parul. She has delivered her lecture on the very first day. If you recall, she took us through the visual cultures, that is the erotic realm of medieval India, where we explore the interrelationship between visual and literary traditions. So now we are back again with yet another lecture by Professor Parul, and this time it is titled Power and Penitence, the Demon as Devotee in Hoysala Sculpture. So for the next session, the first session of the day, I would like to invite my colleague, Richa, my colleague and friend, Richa. So by now you're familiar with our faces. She's convening this event with me. As you know, she is the project manager at Manipal Center for European Studies. She runs the Jean Monnet Center for Excellence, and she teaches courses on culture and literature as well. So Richa, please take the session forward.
Thank you, Tarima. Very good morning to everyone. Today we have another session by Professor Parul Pandya Dhar. Professor Parul, as you all know, is an art historian and professor of history at University of Delhi. She has written prolifically on art and architecture, and her latest edited book, Multivalence of an Epic, is a tour de force that brings together the various depictions of Ramayana in South India and Southeast Asia. She delivered a fascinating lecture on Chalukyan sculpture on the opening day of this winter school, and today she will be speaking on Hoysala sculpture. Professor Parul, we are eagerly waiting to hear your thoughts today.
Well, thank you very much, Tanima Nigam and Richa Gupta for welcoming me and for a generous introduction as always. So what am I doing today? I'm going into the realm of Hoysala sculpture, and one of the very fascinating things about Hoysala sculptures is the whole possibility to delve into a universe of detail. You know, the Hoysala monuments have recently been nominated. It's a source of great pride. The event is being held in Karnataka, and the dossier, I think the dossier has been very recently submitted with the help of a lot of specialists, particularly the Intact chapter of Karnataka. So without going into too much of that, today I'm looking at artistic practices and aesthetics at the intersections of, what is the divine and what is the demonic, what is normative good and what is not, or what is, let's say, in quotes, ethical and what may not be considered ethical. So we're going to go into the details that I was fortunate to spot a couple of years ago, in 2012 to be precise, when I was traveling to these wonderful monuments in the Hassan district, particularly Chennakeshava at Belur and Hoysaleshwara at Halibidu, in addition to a whole lot of others. And as I was glancing through the zoom lens of my camera to see what it is that is carved within it on a couple of Ravananugraha murtis, there indeed was a universe of detail waiting to be explored. And I'm very happy to share that paper with you. Although I have circulated it, I'm happy to present it and discuss it in person. I mean, as much as in person as is possible through the video camera. So this is about those Ravananugraha images, which unfold an extraordinary encounter between the great Hindu god Shiva and the mighty demon king Ravana, which appears as an engaging narrative in ancient Indian literature and art. This mythical episode narrates Ravana's ambitious and arrogant attempt to overthrow Kailash, the Himalayan abode of Shiva, and of the dramatic sequence of events that followed. Disorder prevailed in the divine realm as the mighty Ravan shook the mountain with his many arms. Shiva was quick to restore harmony and crush the demon king's pride. By merely pressing down his toe, the great god brought to bear the weight of the mountain upon the king of demons, who then roared in pain, and hence Ravana. A penitent Ravan then appeased Shiva for 1,000 years before the god finally released him and graced him with a boon. This epic encounter between Ravan and Shiv has been portrayed in the art of the Ravana Anugraha Murti, that is, the embodiment of Shiva's grace upon Ravana. Since the middle of the first millennium, artists have visualized it in many ways and in many contexts across Asia, and particularly in South and Southeast Asia. Sculptors have captured the climactic moments of this narrative through an ingenious tableau-like juxtaposition of scenic and iconic elements, each reinforcing the other in evoking its potent emotive appeal of power, desire, repentance, forgiveness. While Shiva and Ravana are the chief protagonists of this narrative, it is located in the environs of the Himalayas, which provide an ideal setting to convey the tensions and links between the divine, earthly, and demonic realms. At one level, the mountainous landscape acts as a towering and seemingly eternal presence that provides a context and bears witness to this theater of the gods and demons. At another level, the compositional elements that constitute the landscape are imaginatively negotiated by the artist in a manner that renders landscape as an active participant in shaping the encounter and adding fresh levels of meaning. Now, this is especially true of the Hoysala artists. Artfully concealed within the large compositional frame of Ravan lifting the mountain abode of Shiva, you have a whole universe of detail unfolding. So let me not keep you in suspense longer. Let me share my screen. Is this visible?
Yes, it is.
It's clearly visible. The slideshow. Yes, I think we are comfortably now located. You can see this. You can see Ravana's heads on the screen, I think.
Yes.
So a careful observation of the depiction of Kailash, the mountain abode of Shiva, in the Ravana Anugraha compositions at Belur and Halipidu reveals that the qualities actually ascribed to Meru, the world mountain, have been assumed by Kailash in these sculptures, and I'll come to that. Meru as the cosmic mountain at the center of the earth is a recurring theme in Indian mythology, Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain. As the navel of the earth, with its summit as the highest point on earth, it is the axis of the earth, or axis mundi, connecting heaven and earth. The cosmographical and cosmological imagery of Meru has been elaborated at length in the epics and the Puranas. In the Mahabharata, Meru is said to stabilize the heavens by lending support to it. Sweet songs of birds fill the air surrounding it, and celestials attend upon it. It shines like the sun in the midst of 8 mountains. At its center is the city of Brahma, Manovati, of inexpressible splendor, and surrounding Manovati are the 8 cities of the Ashtadikpalas. Now, these 8 cities of the Ashtadikpalas become important here. We are actually talking of the Kailasottana Murti, but I am discussing Meru in the textual imagery here because the two are going to get conflated soon. Meru, with its 4 supporting mountain pillars, is the abode of the 3 gods, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, and is surrounded by the abode of the Dikpalas, or the regions of the directions. In Puranic cosmography, the Ashtadikpalas are known to inhabit their cities on mountains surrounding the Meru. So there are these minor variations that you find in the textual image. Of these, the guardians of the 4 cardinal directions, or the north, south, east, west, are also known as Lokpalas. Coming to Kailash now, Kailash is believed to be one of the mountains surrounding Meru, located to the south of Meru. Shiva and Kubera are known to dwell on Kailash. Other gods visit it, and Yakshas, Rakshasas, Kinnaras, Garudas, Matangas, and Gandharvas dwell upon it. Kailash is mentioned several times in the Uttarakanda of the Ramayana and also in the Shiva Purana as the site of Ravana's encounters with Shiva. Let's see how the architectonics of such a cosmic landscape is unfolding in the details of this sculpture at the Chennakeshava in Belur. And this is on the outer wall. So when you look at it carefully, it reveals that this is no ordinary mountainous landscape. Nor does it seem to be solely a representation of Kailash, as is expected in a depiction of the Ravananugraha episode. Rather, the mountain appears to assume the qualities of Meru, the cosmic mountain. The characteristics of Kailash and Meru then seem to get merged here in this creation by the Hoysala artists. At Chennakeshava in Belur, which is on your screen now, the symbolism of the mountain as temple and the temple as mountain has been effectively embodied. Landscape and monument have been conflated in one. So not only are Kailash and Meru conflated, but landscape and the monument, the mountain and the monument are also conflated here as one. The tapering body of the mountain is crowned with a temple's finial. Yes, you can see an Amalaka of northern affiliation here and a Kalasha on top. So the mountain itself becomes the temple here, resting on the shoulders of this temple mountain. The upper reaches of this temple mountain then connect with the Swargaloka, symbolically by virtue of the proximity of the temple's finial and also by the presence of the gods, the heavenly musicians, Gandharvas, Apsaras, and other celestial beings emerging from the cloudscape. I'll take you into great detail. That's one of the beauties of Hoysala sculpture, but I just want you to see the presence of Shiva in the center and Brahma and Vishnu on the 2 sides, celestial musicians around them, the Swargaloka unfolding on the top, and then the temple's finial, the bindu of which actually connects to infinity. So conceptually, it is very rich here. Now, by placing Ravana beneath a row of serpents, you can see the entwined serpents here, carved under the mountain, the artist conveys his fate, that is Ravana's fate, of having sunk to the netherworld by the mere pressing of a toe by Shiva. This part is the regular iconography. But the Hoysala artist takes it to just another realm. Now, Shiva resides in the upper reaches along with his consort, Uma, and Vrishabha, the bull, and his followers. The worlds, the lokas, Swarga, Bhu, Bhuvaha, Swaha, are layered horizontally and organized hierarchically on the body of the mountain. Swargalok, Bhuvarlok, and Bhulok asserted through the higher, middle, and lower reaches of the mountain, which pulsates with life, and the nether world then is situated beneath, where Ravana is believed to have sunk just by the pressing of Shiva's toe. The mountain demarcates these realms and also connects them, even as it bears witness to the unfolding drama between Shiva and Ravana. The artist of the Ravana Anugraha panel at Belur has effectively configured the cosmic stage upon which this divine demonic encounter is set to unfold. At Hoysaleshwar in Halibidu, the arrangement of the lokas is similar to that noticed at Chennakeshava in Belur. I will have to do a little bit of back and forth. This is at the Hoysaleshwar in Halibidu. But more careful scrutiny reveals that the Ashtadikpalas have been placed along the periphery of the mountain. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. See the Varuna being recognizable by the Makara and so on, Niriti, Indra, Yama, all of them. These are the 4 Dikpalas here and 4 here. The corner ones being the Lokapalas. So actually, an image of Meru has been configured as per the textual imagery. Now at the Hoysaleshwar, the hierarchical arrangement of the lokas and the configuration of the regions of the directions serve as organizational principles. So this becomes like a matrix. The lokas horizontally and the vertically organized, the 3 lokas, and then the Lokapalas and the other Dikpalas. So 8 Dikpalas, the Ashtadikpalas and the 3 lokas then offer a kind of a matrix and organizational principle within which then the drama unfolds. So let me then take you into the details of the Chennakeshava at Belur. Now, I already told you how the Svargaloka is organized. So now Brahma's realm is portrayed to the right and Vishnu's abode to the left of Shiva and Uma on 2 sides. These abodes of the Puranic triad or the 3 Purushas correspond with their textual description in the upper reaches of Meru. Surrounding these godly realms in the upper reaches of the temple mountain, the artist has detailed a heavenly paradise by carving a profusion of tiny dancers, musicians, adorers, and their followers. Let me bring you closer to the top, to the heavenly abode. You can see Brahma and Vishnu on 2 sides. You can see Shiva and Uma, Vrishabha, the bull, and then you have a host of musicians and dancers around it. And then on top also you have the musicians lined up here. So there is a cloudscape that is created. If you go closer in, zoom in, They are within cloudscapes, and this is a very detailed unfolding of the Devas in the Devaloka. The lower part of the temple mountain is lush with flowering and fruiting trees, which from the rich descriptive imagery of the Mahabharata are known to have existed on Meru and its surrounding mountains. Amidst the abundant flora are human figures, monkeys. Let me see if I can take you closer. Okay. All right. All right. At the base of the mountain are a row of serpents in Anjali Hasta. They are all, they have heads and they are holding their hands in Anjali Hasta, which also correspond again to textual descriptions of Meru from the same epic. The entire weight of the great mountain is borne on many heads, arms, and shoulders of the mighty Ravan, who is then crushed under its weight. And he is kneeling down in these images. His knees are bent. Then this also then the row of serpents also indicates the Naga Loka, or the Patala Loka. Woven into this richly symbolic composition are other events related to the central theme of the Ravana Anugraha story. A miniature multi-headed figure with a sword in hand, partially carved but sufficiently incised to be identified as Ravan here, this one, is seen approaching the base of the temple mountain. Presumably, this scene indicates the moment when Ravana had alighted from his Pushpaka Viman and was approaching the lower reaches of Kailash with the intention of uprooting and overthrowing it. Now, between the lokas is pictured on the body of the temple mountain. This space has been effectively used by the artist to portray the encounters between Shiva and Ravana. Here you have, I'll have to go quick. So here you have Shiva holding his Atmalinga and offering it, and the entire episode of Ravana then, playing on the veena while crushed under the toe of, crushed into the Patal Lok. And then if you go closer, here you will see the linga, and further to the right then the entire narrative unfolds. If someday we have more time, we can talk about it, but you have the entire episode unfolding here, where the episode of his severing his head one after the other is also narrated in great detail. I'm afraid we are at 5 minutes to 12, so I'm going to have to move faster, but you have the paper with you to read it. And so let me then go to the Hoysaleshwara at Halibidu quickly, and then sort of explain it verbally quickly, and then reach the conclusion. Now, the Hoysaleshwara at Halibidu reveals a composition that is broadly similar to the one at Chennakeshava in Belur, but differs in some details. The hierarchical division of the mountain into lokas and the presence of serpents underneath the base of the mountain come close to the Belur version, but here the Svarga Loka is occupied solely by Shiva, Uma, and attendants. Hoysaleshwar is a Shiva temple, Belur was a Vishnu temple. Now, in this case, the weapons that Ravana holds in his many hands are rendered more forcefully, and his manner of pulling out the sword out of its sheath conveys a more combative attitude. The idea of Meru is reinforced in the Hoysaleshwara composition by the presence of the Ashtadikpalas along the periphery of the cosmic mountain. The four Lokpalas, who are regions of the cardinal directions, Indra, Yama, Varuna, and Kubera, are positioned in the four corners here. The four Lokpalas and then the other four Dikpalas, forming the 8 Dikpalas together. They rule over their respective cities located on the 8 mountains that surround the central Meru. So I leave out the detailed descriptions of the Dikpalas. They are available to you for reading. You already have my text. Now, between the earthly realm and the heavens, in the central part of the mountain, one can observe 2 distinct cameos amidst a profusion of figures. Ravana offering his heads to the linga and Ravana entrusting the linga to a figure, which are both from the Shiva Purana narrative discussed earlier in the context of Chennakeshava at Belur. Just above this images stands a conspicuous figure. Let me see if I can quickly show it to you. So you have here the linga Pithika, the linga and the heads around it. Ravana offering his heads. Here the Veena scene is not carved, but the entire narrative of his great sacrifice, penance, penitence is building within the details of the sculptures both at the Hoysaleshwar and the Chennakeshava. Now, I'll introduce 2 further sculptures into the discussion to understand how the Hoysala artists arrived at this kind of a spectacular template. One is located in the Trikuteshwara at Gadag that was built during the end of the later Chalukyan rule in Karnataka. Here, this one. A kneeling Ravana is visible, crushed under the weight of the mountain, which is made up of rocks. The mountain is shown as made up of rocks, as was the convention for this during the later Chalukyan period. Yet at the Trikuteshwara at Gadag, the depiction of Kailash is in the image of a temple mountain crowned with a Dravidian Shikhara or cupola and stupi or finial. This is an innovation which marks a departure from other late Chalukyan representations and presages the Hoysala template for the Ravana Anugraha Murtis. The body of the temple mountain at Gadag is organized horizontally in 3 registers. Earlier, I mean, why do I say that this marks the turning point? Because the earlier one were like this. This is from Lakundi in Kashi Vishweshwara. So this is not the template that is used by the Hoysala artists. It's the Trikuteshwara at Gadag that provides the template. Now the template for the Hoysala Ravana Anugraha images clearly evolved sometime during the mid-11th century towards the end of late Chalukyan rule. The example from the Trikuteshwara temple complex in Gadag provides a vital link in the transition. The Hoysala artists, with their love for detail, developed this basic format further and gave expression to a remarkable visual composition of the Ravana Anugraha narrative. By embellishing their creations within a microcosm of significant details, they evolved this unique template which extended far beyond the visual translation of Ravana's attempt to overthrow Shiva's abode as mentioned in the texts. Through an informed and creative engagement with the larger context within which this divine demonic encounter needs to be understood, the sculptors at Belur and Halividu succeeded in visualizing the Ravana Anugraha Murti afresh in a manner that resonates with the totality of its associated meaning. So you have uski dhvani or vyanjana ki, who is demonic, who is divine, what is ethical and what is not ethical through the creative imaginary of the artists who, yes, he is crushed by Shiva's toe and goes into Patala Loka, but see him in the, in the light of the rising Shaiva Bhakti movements in this period, how he emerges as a figure that cannot be bracketed between the good and the bad, or the ethical and the unethical. So I'll end here, and what I have left out can be taken up in the discussion hour.
Thank you so much for once again taking us through these really spectacular vignettes of medieval temple architecture. If I could, I did go through your essay on challenging cosmic order, and there you make the striking point about the magnified image of Ravana, depiction of Ravana in this cosmos.
Yes.
What I want to ask is, and I will just quote you quickly from that particular essay, which has been shared with everyone, Challenging Cosmic Order. You say that by highlighting Ravana's grandeur and prowess, the importance of Shiva's supremacy over him, and the ultimate invisibility of the cosmic order that Ravana sought to challenge is even more potently established. Now, could you maybe elaborate a little more on how this happens, how this magnification of Ravana actually ends up, showing how how Shiva's supremacy is highlighted?
All right. So what the point that I'm making there requires a little deeper engagement with the way that this iconography itself has been, or the iconography of the narrative of Ravana Anugraha has been visualized in a pan-Indian, in some cases in a pan-Asian context. So you have particularly by this time in the northern parts of India, or even much earlier. I mean, there is a clear, you will see a difference, and I mean, I don't want, but in the visual domain, certainly, the Ravana Anugraha that you see in the northern parts, say the Pratiharas, the Gurjara Pratiharas, or all across central India, western India, the northwestern India, you will see that Ravana is literally a footnote. So there is this very gorgeous image of Uma Maheshwara that occupies most of the space of the sculpture, and it's on the pedestal, the mancha or the pithika of the temple, that you have a tiny Ravana, even if he is playing the veena, or if he is shown lifting the Kailash, he is shown completely like a footnote underneath, and it is the grandeur of Uma and Shiva that takes over the whole space. In the Deccan and in the deep south, you have say, those, I recall that beautiful image from the Virupaksha, the southern porch of the Virupaksha temple. On one of the pillars, you have another grand Ravana Anugraha, where again, the artists of the Deccan and the South have given much greater, much grander space to Ravana. Now, we do not have anywhere recorded what their specific intention was to give Ravana the kind of the space, the kind of importance, visual significance that you see in the sculptures of the Deccan and South India. But one may hazard a guess that there were deeper sympathies to the character of Ravana as the various Ramayana retellings changed, and in particular as they shaped in the southern parts of India. That his devotionalism, the various devotional Ramayanas that came up later, and also his presence as a great devout Shaiva Bhakta become far more emphasized. And so, to go back now to your statement that, that his might, even in the inscriptions of the period, Kaduveti of Kanchi is called like a Ravana on earth by the enemy king, the Gangas, who defeat the Pallavas along with the Chalukyas. So, the formidable enemy as Ravan, so that when he is defeated, so it is in the reverse that the the grandeur of Shiva is sort of expressed in the light of Ravana's prowess and power. That's what I mean there. Yeah.
That's quite a reversal of sorts.
Yes, it's a very interesting sort of use of metaphors and simile. You will find in a lot of places, but this is true also in the Valmiki Ramayana, in the Bhakti Kavya, where Ravana is compared to, not only Shiva is compared to Meru, Ravana is also compared to Meru and Kailash. His many arms are compared to strong trees. So, and his radiance is compared to the sun. So, this kind of a watertight division of who is a demon and who is divine itself gets challenged. At least not challenged, at least it gets nuanced.
Which brings me to another question, observation, after which we can open up the floor to anyone else who would like to speak. It's when I was reading your essay, I mean, now I have another clarification from you. I was thinking that with this specific Hoysala sculpture, it looked like some kind of reinforcement of the ethical order that was being done through this specific architecture. But now that you've said this, now of course now I know it's not that simple. It's not very black and white imposition of ethical order, because I mean, referring back to your last lecture where we were talking about the portrayal of the erotic, it looked like there was some, in that specific aesthetic choice, there was some sort of, let's say, flouting or sidestepping of specific ethical paradigms.
No, not flouting, Richa. It was not, nowhere was it flouting. It just, there were differential calibrations of what Auchitya meant. In the world of the kings, in the world of the gods, and in the world of a demon, nevertheless a king like Ravan. So a kind of so when the Sundarakanda, with Hanuman's great leap into Lanka, when the emotional and physical landscape shifts to Lanka, you then have a different moral order that seems to be presented there, and different moral ethical order. The Vanaras molesting the women in Ravana's palace is also, after all, the army of Hanumana is not shown as unethical, but this behavior is tolerable. So it's the world of the Vanaras and the world of the Danavas. And you moved away from Ayodhya and your setting is in Lanka.
Right.
So, I mean, if we have a little bit of time, as you say, What I can do is I don't want to present more, but I can show some details within these profusion of details if somebody is interested. Should I
Sure,
take
please go. Surely, please.
5-10 minutes to do that before we ask questions? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's go here of the details in these sculptures. Yeah. Okay. So we spoke about the temple as the mountain. How much time, Richa?
You can take
Can
another
I take
15
about
minutes.
10 minutes, 10, 15
Absolutely.
minutes? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I spoke about the temple mountain, that is the mountain in the shape of a temple. If you see the Amalaka and the Kalasha on top, it's a northern temple here. You know that the north and the south both come together in a lot of the temple models, right from the time of the early Chalukyas. And you have the central offset, the side, the Pratirathas, and the entire thing is conceived of as a temple. The Swarga Loka is in these parts, and you have Brahma, Mahesh, and Uma with Vrishabha, and Vishnu here. You have a whole group of musicians and singers, Vidyadharas, Mala, garland bearers, Maladharas, the smaller Amalakas of the architectonics of the temple mountain. And then beautifully, in a cloudscape, you have the Swargaloka unfolding in this part. Now, as you go down, here, you have the entire narrative. Of course, these are dramas, the Swarg, part of the Swargalok. But here, if you see now, you have what does Ravana ask when Shiva offers him the benediction after he's pleased by his recitation of the Sama, the verses from the Samaveda? When he is placed under the Patala Loka just by the pressing of Shiva's toe, he is believed to have, in the mythology of the Ravana Anugraha, to have plucked the veins from his own hand and made the strings of the veena that he plays, and he plays verses of the Saman to please Shiva. This is part of the Shiva Purana. So it's the Shiva Purana narrative that is dominating here, not the Uttara Khanda of the Ramayana. Yeah, and so here is the other episode of him offering his heads, one after the other, sacrificing his heads. In fact, one of the hero stones from Ittikala Durga in Karnataka has a wonderful inscription that talks about those heroes who are willing to offer their heads to their overlords in service of their overlords. That kind of a devotion, that kind of a surrender to the master is compared to, they are then compared to like Ravanas of Kali Yuga. So, Ravana is constantly extolled here. And here in the center, you have, Shiva himself offering the Atma Linga to Ravana, because Ravana asks for his linga to carry it to Lanka. So he offers, but with the rider that it should not be placed on the ground anywhere. So really we can take a lot of time to analyze these details. And I was both happy as an academic and surprised that these details had been missed earlier, because I didn't find them in any of the scholarly papers. Now here you have, the artist has left it incomplete. So you have the 10-headed Ravana. He must have arrived to and was stopped by Nandin, not Nandin Rishabha, but Nandin, the attendant of Mahadeva, that he should not cross over Kailash because Shiva and Uma were sporting there. And so that made him, that agitated him, that made him very angry. And he decided to shake Kailash. So the actual location of the narrative is Kailasha, but Kailasha gets superimposed with Meru, as I was reading out, in the paper. So let me then move to the other one, that is Hoysaleshwara. This is a miniature one at the Chennakeshwara, but this is a masterpiece, Hoysaleshwara Kalivida. Again, you have a host of details not to be missed. Indra, Yama, Varuna, Niriti, Ishana, Agni, all the Ashtadikpalas. So that frames it in the likeness of Meru. Yeah, and you then again have within it that same, the sacrificing of the heads that are placed around the linga here. The Vinaya episode is missing, but here again the Atma linga is being offered. And the actual act of the shaking of the mountain is also carved out here separately in miniature. So so is your the rishis are seated within the caves of Kailash. Sometimes the imagery moves to Kailash and sometimes the imagery moves to Meru. So that it's a kind of a deliberate conflation that is happening, a kind of a visual double entendre that seems to emerge in both these depictions. I don't know if this is clearer. Here, the offering of the Atmalinga, the offering of the heads, these are the caves within the mountain. It's a whole vocabulary, and it's been I don't know who was the guiding sutradhari, or who gave these details to the artist to carve out. But this within the larger, let's say, if you want to call it restoration of cosmic order by Shiva, that is, he doesn't allow Kailash oblique Meru to be pressed down. It is also within it are so many nuances of, is he really all demonic? But look at him as a Shiva Bhakta. I love this image. Just this part. So before the Hoysala template, you have this regular template of the Ravana Anugraha in these parts, where you have the Kailash, you have Shiva and Uma on top, you have the lion inside, the various caves of the mountain, and of course he's kneeling because he's been crushed down. But this is clear Kailasottan. There are no Dikpalas, there are no Meru imageries unfolding here. It is in Gadag that you have the temple mountain emerging first. And then by the time of the, this is the later Chalukya template, but by the time of the Hoysalas, the temple mountain itself becomes the field for a very rich, layered iconography of the encounter between the divine and the demonic to unfold. So I think that's about it. We could open it to questions now.
Yes. Panjali has a question. Brahmari also has something to ask.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
Brahmari, would you like to say it loud or would you want me to read it out? Okay, I guess I'll just quickly read out Brahmari. So she's a little more curious about Sthala Mahatmyam of Gokarna, and asking for references to people of that time period being educated or informed about these detailed carvings.
Is there, could you read out her question?
She's saying, I'm curious about the Sthala Mahatyam of Gokarna, and do we get references to people of that time period being educated or informed about these detailed carvings?
No, I haven't come across any clear reference about them being educated, but I would like to believe that they are educated about it. So how is it? It seems to be a known narrative to be sculpted like this on the temple walls, and part of the narrative is also part of the Shiva Mahapurana. So this Atmalinga and all of that. And then you have the tradition of in the Lingayat, the Veera Shaivas, they wear the Atmalinga here. You also have sculptures of Shiva with his Atmalinga from the time of Ellora onwards. So yeah.
I was curious to know about the Sthala Mahatme, the Kshetra Purana.
Yes.
So is it really true about Gokarna that the Atmalinga was
True. This is
Ganapati
part of
placed
it is a part of the myth. It would be like saying, well, was there a Ravana? There is always that some grain of an occurrence that then turns into a myth. So I don't want to say if the Gokarna Sthala Mahatmya is true. This is part of it. It's mythical, but from the myth you read the history of mentalities. You read the history of how cultures have understood and interpreted themselves. How people
You
have.
just gave a hint in your first lecture that the Ravana of Sri Lanka and the Ravana Anugraha Murthy, Ravana.
Yes, are not. No, I said that that Sri Lanka should not get conflated with Ravana's Lanka. So we need to keep in mind that this is a mythical geography that is unfolding, even though there is a sense of the relative movement southwards throughout it, right? But to say that Sri Lanka and that the Setu Bandhana and all that, whether that's a huge debate there that we open up. I would like to stick to ethics and aesthetics here. Yeah.
And
Anything to do with what I spoke about would be more pointed.
So do we take the chronological order? Can we take the chronological order as the Gadaga Trikuteshwara temple was built first, and then the Beluru
Absolutely, yes.
and then Hoysaleshwara?
Yes.
Thank you, madam.
But Chennakeshava and Hoysaleshwara are not very far apart in time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam.
Sure. Well.
Thank you, Brahmari. Anchit has a question. Anchit, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this interesting lecture. I really like that point where the Kailash looked like a temple shikhara, and you showed this Amalaka and the Kalash also. I haven't read your paper yet, but there was one observation, and so I thought like that the whole structure of Kailash also looked like the whole shikhar. So, for example, the Dikpals, they look like different. They are offering a visual space for different levels of the Karna, of the Karna part of different levels, and the central structure looked like a Badra of the Shikhar. Is it so?
No, because the Dikpalas are carved on the sculpture that is from the Hoysaleshwara at Halibidu, and not on the Chennakeshava at Belur. The Amalaka and the Kalasha are on the temple model of the Chennakeshava at Belur. So
Okay.
also the Karnas will not be, that is the corner projections, right? They will not be arranged vertically like this. The Karnas would pan out then, right? The corners. So no, what it does, it creates a kind of a matrix, and it organizes the unfolding of this grand encounter between the divine and the demonic within a cosmological framework. So what is it if you have the axis mandai? Yeah. So from the navel to the pinnacle. Yeah. And encompassing all the 8 directions. So what has the artist or the one who has conceptualized this achieved by organizing it around this principle conceptually of the axis mandal and the Ashtadikpalas. So horizontally the Ashtadikpalas, right? Or actually all over. Why horizontal? Yeah. And then so the entire cosmos is being organized around where, so this encounter between the divine and the demonic takes place from the Swarga Loka to the Patala Loka. All the Ashtadikpalas, and at the pinnacle of Meru. I'm sorry if I use my hands too much.
Can you
But
please
do
show
you get
that
a
image
sense
again?
that it's the entire manifestation that the artist has so beautifully kind of framed the narrative with it. That's what is important here.
Ma'am, can you please show that image again of Hoysaleshwar temple?
Oh, I just deleted it. Anchit, you're my student, aren't you?
Okay,
You
no
have
issues,
more
ma'am.
access to me than everyone else.
Okay, no issues, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anchit. We have Dipanjali who wants to ask a question, and then we will ask Benal to unmute. Dipanjali, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Richa. Thank you, Parul ma'am, for the wonderful lecture. My question is sort of related to what Pramari asked earlier. I'm interested to know, like, what is your opinion on what do you think is informing the intricate and ornamental aesthetic of Hoysala architecture, or like the art in general, which seems to be quite distinct from the earlier or other styles that I see. So I'm thinking of the very minimalistic kind of style that one sees in the Neo-Vaishnavite monasteries in Assam, which are called Hotros. So some argue that it is related to the ascetic tendencies in the philosophy of Neo-Vaishnavism that came about in the 16th century. So I'm just trying to
So
wonder if
can you say that last bit about that the northeast?
Yeah. So in Assam, the Neo-Vaishnavite philosophy that was propagated by Shankardeva in 16th century Assam. So the hotros or the monasteries that came out of that period, they have a very minimalistic kind of aesthetic in terms of texture or color or style. So some argue that it may be related to the ascetic kind of philosophy in general of the Neo-Vaishnavism there. So I'm trying to probably also connect, or maybe not rightly so, I don't know, is there maybe a connection to the existing religious or ideological bent of that time period for the Hoysalas as well, or maybe the artists are following some other guidelines from the Shilpa Sastras, if at all they are following? I'm not sure. I was just trying to see what your
So
view is.
that's an interesting point. Thank you. But as far as this absolute fascination for micro detail, I mean, if you look at the Toranas on the Hoysaleshwara at Halibita, no wonder the artists have left their names behind, under every Shilabalika, under the Dwara Toranas, sometimes long descriptions. It's almost jewel-like in its finish. It kind of suggests, like goldsmithy, that level of, and in the sun when it shines, when those sculptures shine, you have them radiating almost like the way gold jewelry would shine on the monument. But your question is why? And the question why, we need to remember that at the end of it, we cannot forget the materiality of the medium that is being used. Yeah. So the kind of stone that is used in building the temples of the Hoysala period, particularly the Hoysaleshwar is one of the most magnificent examples. So also the Chennakeshava, but my favorite is is the Hoysaleshwara. So the quality of the stone enabled the workers also to go into such minute detail. If you look at Pallavas, the Mahabalipuram, the artists were no less skilled. But the hard granite that they worked with, you know, the monuments of the Pallavas did not allow for that kind of detailing. If you look at the interiors of the Vimala Vasahi in Rajasthan, Mount Abu, then the ceilings, they actually defy, they look as though, are they carved on soap or is that marble? So that kind of intricate carving was possible on freshly mined, freshly excavated rock of the kind that is used to build the temples. I would not put so much into the religio-philosophical backdrop, as a rationale for this miniaturization in sculpture. We know of miniature paintings, but this kind of miniaturization of sculpture is something that happens, begins with the later Chalukyas, but actually really blossoms with the Hoysalas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, Vinan, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Parul. I have a quick comment and then a follow-up question that way. That was fascinating. I went through the paper and I think the color images are so more lively in the black and white and print.
Tell the publishers, Benil, tell the publishers, they drive us mad.
My
Manipal
God.
Universal Press has been so kind with this multivalence book, but otherwise we are told. I was recently told by a publisher, you've got 100 images from all over India and Southeast Asia. No, we can't publish your book. We can't afford it, So the thing is that I told the publisher that, hello, I went with my money all over Southeast Asia and I'm giving you the images for free, copyright free. But yeah, so here it is.
So with these images, like in the PPT, the essay then made much more sense. No, with you could get the
and this is a
I was missing the 3D effect.
This is a generous spread of the Hoysala artists' work, even in the printed version. Usually, the publishers will not allow us.
And thank you for this lecture. Like I'm not a student of I've been a student of performance, and narratology specifically is what interests me. And I got so much from this lecture about there's so much in the stone. There's so much of narrative which is going on. It's not just about
what kind of a creative intuition, imagination would have resulted in this. And look at the conceptual layerings that are emerging from it. I mean, I'm completely stunned by that.
And so next time I'm at these sites, I would be much more cautious. Now I would have my lenses on, Parul lenses on, Professor Parul lenses on, and I'll see. And so relatedly, there's this question that I had is what Brahmari and others were also asking. I was thinking that because I've been studying a lot of popular devotional performances, and I see that there are these snapshot moments from this temple that you enacted, like Ravan standing like this, and in popular performances in North India, in Ram Leela and all. Now, if I try and relate after your analysis, I see that those photographic moments are there. Like these are in the popular repertoire, they enact these. So I was thinking that, is it then maybe the artists, performers might have some take, no? They might have seen these images, which has been a reading in Odisha, when they try and think about Odissi, the evolution of Odissi as a dance from the temple architecture. They try and think about how these were created. But I was also associatedly thinking that in popular performance repertoire, there have been these major debates between, as you suggested, link it up to the earlier section, because you showed us an image of a section about that Ravana's castle, Ravana's palace, and there was this debauchery, a lot of excesses out there. So in popular performance repertoire, there is also this ethical, non-ethical. Ravan has been portrayed as the prime bhakt. Ravan is brought in before the war, the final war. Ravan is the person who invokes Durga. So in popular repertoire, all of these discussions are on to let people decide what has to happen. But there is also this specific reference about Ashok Vatika and this question of consent. I was just thinking, are there also references? Are there temples where Ashok Vatika or similar such images are also depicted? Or also another one is a similar portrayal also available at Hampi? Because Hampi also falls within the Hoysala, is it? So
you see, the
thanks.
Vijayanagara, there are 2-3 questions, and tell me if I forget to answer it. So let me begin from the reverse. The Vijayanagara mode of representing these are very different. For some reason, and this is something I was discussing with Professor Anila Varti some time back as part of another lecture, I was wondering, why the rich Hoysala idiom is given up even in Karnataka by the Vijayanagara Empire. It's almost like, the style that prevailed in Chola Mandalam and in Tondai Nadu region is brought into the heartland of Tamil Nadu also. So was it a kind of an establishment of a particular, through the visual vocabulary, the change in the visual language, the change in the style of rendition is very noted from, it does not follow the Hoysala style, the Vijayanagara period. And in fact, you have tiny episodes carved in, registers. Almost little squares are created on the temple surfaces. So that depiction is very different from the Hoysala depiction completely. Benil, what was your other question? I'm sorry.
About other images of Ravan, like Ashok Vatika, or any other ways of thinking about this dilemma?
In sculpture, at the Amriteshwara in Amritapura, also of the Hoysala period, later to the Hoysaleshwara, you have Sita in Ashokavana, who is being shown the illusory decapitated heads of Rama and Lakshmana. You see, the narrative has changed a lot by then. And so she's sitting amidst the, the Rakshasis. And she is shown that, okay, your husband and your brother-in-law have both died. Ravana has defeated them. You now better concede and join Ravana, in his palace. So Ashok Vatika, usually the sculptors have preferred these kind of scenes of showing Sita's desperation or Sita's agony in Ashokavana, or a desolate Sita in Ashokavana, a contemplative one, or receiving the ring from, receiving the Chudamani, or receiving the, the jewel sent by Rama through Hanumana. In northern Indian paintings, you have more of the medieval period, you have more details in the painted repertoire. But in performance art, since I am also from a performance background, Ravana's supplications to Sita are actually forming a very big episode both in Kathakali and in Yakshagan. In Kathakali, I know for sure. And in the performance that is really emphasized, but the sculptors have by and large left it out. Does that help? And the last bit about the relationship between popular performance traditions and sculpture, I have given a few indications in one of the other papers that I've circulated, where when you look at some of the sculptures, so like for example, when Ravana sets out on his chariot to meet Rama and Lakshmana in the final battle, you have Ravana's chariot, the leg of Ravana's chariot, the rear leg is sculpted like a human leg. Okay. And there is a woman holding on to that leg as though dissuading Ravana from entering into this epic battle. And I couldn't help but feel that, could this have been enacted at the time when these sculptures were being made, that Mandodari or some woman from Ravana's palace is actually trying to stop Ravana from going into this battle which will spell his nemesis. So yeah, very interesting connections between the performative and the sculpted painted. I don't know if I've answered.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Banal. There is a question in the chat box from Ajaya.
Yes.
She asks, would it be of any relevance or significance to discuss the artistic amplification of theme with regard to religious affiliation of the temple, especially the Janakeshwara? I understand the pan-Indian frequency of the theme and the Vishnu temples accommodating Shaiva themes.
This is very common. This is very, very common. The best of the Ramayana narratives in the early Chalukyan heartland are all on Shaiva temples. So it should not come as a surprise if the Ravana Anugraha is on the Chennakeshava dedicated to Vishnu. And as far as the only difference that I noticed was in the minute details, where in the Chennakeshava, you have, because the theme is, in the theme, Shiva is central, but Chennakeshava being a Vishnu temple, Brahma and Vishnu are carved on the two sides, showing the entire, the Puranic triad. Whereas in Hoysaleshwara, Vishnu and Brahma are done away with in this imagery. But by and large, epic and Puranic narratives were not really constrained. Only the main icon and the main offset images, the ritual processions, all of that were taken care of by the theology being followed, by the theological orientations of a particular temple. But otherwise, many accommodative tendencies are visible. Yeah.
Okay, Tanima has a question. Tanima, please go ahead.
Yes. So this question is inspired from my reading of Professor Setta's book on Buddhist artisans and their architectural vocabulary. So I'm not sure if this is of any direct relevance or significance to our present discussion, but I spent quite a bit of time, almost a year, working with him on that book. And sadly, before I could ask him more questions, he had left us.
But I cannot answer his questions. But yes, go ahead.
He has left me with this inquiry that I always get. I recently visited Hoysala sculptures, and I also saw a lot of other monuments in India, and somewhere his influence, he has infected me to ask this one question: what about the artisan? I think throughout his work as an historian, he has been focused on changing the prevailing perspectives of about the artisan class. So does the literacy and the social status of the sculptor have any bearing on the skill that is displayed the wonderful skills that are displayed in the, the architectural depictions of Hoysala sculpture?
Well, his work has more than enough established that the artisans and the artists were not all illiterate. There were different types of artists. I have studied artists of the earlier period, of the early Chalukyan period. There too, the artist as a cognoscenti, the artist understanding the intricacies of his creations, being aware of the larger cultural milieu, Achalan, Natasevya Achalan says, in the entire Jambu Dweepa, there is nobody who na bhuto na bhavishya. There will be none as good at making these, as well versed in the Shilpa Shastras. That is Narasopa, sorry, not Achalan. And Natasevya Achalan talks about how, Bharata's Agama, the way the Agratala Sanchara is described in Bharata's Agama. So the artists took pride in being, in fact, they validated their excellence through their knowledge of the Shastras. So there is no way that all artists were illiterate, right? Now, obviously, there were various levels. So there were Kalakuttis who were stonemasons. And then there were Sutradharis, Acharyas, Upadhyayas, Ojas, who were, so there is a hierarchy among the artists, different artists also. And so there were some who were very well versed in the Puranas, in the knowledge of the texts. You see today we saw such a lot of textual imagery coming to life, of course, through the creative, interventions of the artists themselves, so that the sculpture does not replicate or parrot the text. The sculpture adds many new levels to it, adds many new voices to it.
It's almost a retelling, like we've had.
Yes,
it's a retelling of the
yes,
tale.
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thanks, Tanima. There's another question from Nishant.
Yes.
He asks, could you please elaborate on the political implications of these elaborate Ravana Gruha sculptures, such as the light that it casts on the relationship between rulers and their feudatories?
In this case, not, Nishant. But in several other cases where we found very specific references to Vibhishana, and all at the Papanatha in Pattadakal, yes. But here I did not find any direct reference to it being a direct metaphor for the kind of relationship between rulers and feudatories.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions, comments? This is your time.
Richa, can I say something?
Yes, please, Professor Shivrakash, please go ahead.
Thank you, Parulji, for this erudite and profound presentation. And
Thank you.
you have proved what we have been saying in these sessions, that artistic imagination reimagines the ethics of characters and situations. And that was wonderfully brought out in this presentation. And how, by making use of the devices of his art, the artist not only recreates the characters, he recreates the whole ethics of the situation. And that was fantastic. And your presentation is one of the biggest takeaways of this winter school. Thank you very much, Parulji.
Shiv Prakash ji, I should thank you. I'm, I think that this whole idea of the winter school is so absolutely so profound. I don't think that something like this has happened before. Bringing in literature, visual, and having such an intense workshop on the on ethics and aesthetics. So we're all very grateful to you for making this happen. Thank you very much.
I'm also grateful to all of you, and particularly you have been making 2 presentations in our winter school. Thank you, Parulji, and I look forward to working with you in future.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, Professor Prakash. Okay, we have another question from Abhishek. Please go ahead, Abhishek.
Yeah, ma'am, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, my question was that, I mean, it's a question as a student of when we tend to study the subjects like aesthetics, and I'm not into architecture or iconographic in any way. I'm basically a cognitive science student. So I wanted to know, ma'am, you said this in cosmic order, this demon thing is happening, like how you perceive these characters with the Ravanas and things like that. The same thing happens with us when we are studying these subjects, especially ethics, I mean, aesthetics and ethics and things like that. So with your experience, what would you guide us that what should we avoid and what should we approach and how should we approach these subjects? Because that's a very difficult thing when we are studying these things. Thank you, ma'am.
How should you approach the subject of aesthetics?
Yeah, ma'am, aesthetics or subjects like these, where there is a duality in the sense, as you explained, Ravanas, and you said that in cosmic realm, where it is happening, and within our minds also, these two things are happening. I have been conditioned thinking that Ravana in northern India, he is such and such, and he is such and such. And then you are, as a student, if you are studying such a subject, so how to reduce your biasness in a way? While as a student?
No, I think that the rationality of your mind and the imaginative, creative abilities, they all reside in your mind and in your being. Read what you enjoy reading, even if you're reading a fiction or you're reading poetry from Europe, or you're reading any classic in Sanskrit or Tamil or Kannada. Enjoy it, read it, and it will start talking to you. It's what all of us did, So if I had visited these temples as a 10-year-old and just stared at it in absolute awestruck manner and come back, I may not have seen this. But years and years of reading, or years and years of looking at ancient sculptures and monuments, then they start speaking to you. So the thing to do is to follow your mind and to read what you enjoy, and to read what what our wonderful scholars of yesteryears and of the present are telling us. Read what you enjoy, and it will speak to you. It will speak to you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure listening to you. And for the uninitiated among us, like Pinil said, we will now put on the Parul lens and look around when we go to visit these sites. Thank you so much.
There are many more exalted lenses. Mine is a rustic one.
We will start with this though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Parul. Thank you, everyone.